tonight in Washington. Jennifer, let's start with you.
Harris, after striking the interim deal in Geneva, Secretary of State John Kerry flew straight to London.
Now the really hard part begins, and that is the effort to get the comprehensive agreement, which will require enormous steps in terms of verification, transparency, and accountability.
Here's what the deal includes. It pauses construction of the Arak heavy water reactor, which could provide weapons-grade plutonium, a second track to a bomb. This was a key demand of the French. It neutralizes Iran's stockpile of uranium refined to a concentration of 20%. It suspends enrichment above 5% for 6 months. Iran agrees to not add centrifuges to its existing cascades, but leaves intact more than 18,000 centrifuges, which will continue to operate. It allows daily IAEA inspections at Fordo and Natanz.
These are substantial limitations which will help prevent Iran from building a nuclear weapon. Simply put, they cut off Iran's most likely paths to a bomb.
In exchange for superficial, easily reversible concessions on the nuclear program, Iran has gained time, legitimacy, relief from the economic sanctions, and probably relief from an Israeli strike. A huge win for Iran.
The deal does not require Iran to ship its current stockpile of enriched uranium out of the country, which means any enrichment pauses can be reversed. The deal received a less than ringing endorsement from key Democrats on Capitol Hill.
I think that this is a marginal improvement. It does freeze some of their activity in place, and it continues the major sanctions in place. It's going to be costly on a continuing basis to them.
Iran's leadership has just issued a statement that if Congress imposes new sanctions, then the deal is off. Also, the Foreign Ministry of Iran saying that it does not believe it must stop activity at Arak or Natanz. Harris.
Well, a key detail that you're now fleshing out a little bit more that I wrote down from what you said, Jennifer, they can keep already enriched uranium, and that's pertinent. As you say, they could restart at any time. We know that Iran's nuclear program has grown in the past decade. Details on that.
Well, it's grown very substantially. In 2003, remember, Iran had only 164 centrifuges. Today, it has 19,000. In 2003, Iran approached the Bush administration with an offer to talk about its nuclear program. That overture was rejected, and here we are today. The current deal does not require Iran to destroy any of those centrifuges. Iran gets to keep its relatively large stockpile of reactor-grade uranium, which could still be converted into weapons-grade uranium in a matter of months, Harris.
Yeah, and that's what Israel is balking at, that this somehow sounds like a sweetheart deal for them. Jennifer Griffin, thank you. The White House is now confirming President Obama has spoken with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu about the deal. We're told the president reaffirmed the shared goal of preventing Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon. But Netanyahu is strongly against this deal. He calls it, quote, a historic mistake. Leland Vittert, live tonight from Jerusalem. Leland, what are the people in Jerusalem saying right now?
Exactly the issue here, Paris, between the president and the prime minister. Two very different worldviews in terms of the Iranian nuclear program. These leaders seem to be talking at each other, both privately and publicly. For the Israelis, they say they do not want the Iranians to have the ability to get a bomb. That means dismantling their centrifuges, giving up their nuclear fuel, those kinds of things. For the United States, it seems enough if simply the Iranians don't actually have a bomb, which is a very distinct and different view of the world. Prime Minister Netanyahu didn't pull any punches today after learning about this deal.
Last night is not a historic agreement. It's a historic mistake. So Israel is not bound by this agreement. We cannot and will not allow a regime that calls for the destruction of Israel to obtain the means to achieve this goal.
There's a very thinly veiled threat that Israel reserves the right to take unilateral military action against the Iranian nuclear facility, but that is really at the very edge of the envelope for the Israeli Air Force in terms of their ability and capability tactically. Also remember, it's a time that the Israeli Air Force, the Israeli military does not want to launch a strike because of the very sensitive diplomatic negotiations that are going on right now. The U.S. would very much like to avoid a strike. What's really important here to note here is how the allies that used to deal with things very privately between the United States and Israel when there was a disagreement on matters are now dealing with things very publicly and very disagreeably in a vocal way in the media, on television, those kinds of things. In fact, just in the past couple of days, Harris, the Israeli foreign minister said, if the Americans are going to make deals like these, we may need to start searching for new allies. Some very, very tough language here between what were bedrock friends.
Yeah, you know, Leland, you bring up such a good point, because that vocal nature of all of this, too, might be coming from the people, the citizens who live there. So I'm curious to know, what are average Israelis saying about this?
Now, it's very tough to walk back these kinds of words. Tonight, the U.S. ambassador to Israel went on the two major television newscasts to try to win over the hearts and minds of many Israelis. Whether that has worked or not, we'll have to see over the next couple of days. But what is interesting here is that the prime minister is making a very dangerous political gamble, in the sense that there are now a lot of Israelis who are saying, not only do we have a bad deal in the sense of a bad deal with Iran, but we also have a bad deal in the sense that our prime minister has failed to get a good deal and has also picked a very large fight with the United States, still Israel's best ally in the world.
Leland Vitter, thank you very much. So even as the Obama administration is talking about how good an agreement this is with Iran so far, there's somewhat of a major disagreement about what's actually in it. Iran's president, Hassan Rouhani, says the deal ends all sanctions against his country, and that it grants what he calls Iran's right to continue enriching uranium. The White House flatly says none of that is true.
No matter what interpretations are given, Iran's right to enrichment has been recognized in the text of the agreement. And for that reason, I announced to the Iranian nation that Iran's enrichment activity will continue as before.
Well, that's a different take. Iran's foreign minister has a warning for our U.S. Congress tonight. Do not go ahead with any new economic sanctions, saying if new penalties are imposed, the deal is off. Well, some of our European allies say that they welcome the deal with Iran. British Foreign Secretary William Hague flew back to London from Geneva. He thanked the United States for its commitment, with Secretary of State John Kerry by his side.
It's a very important opportunity for the future, and I think it vindicates the policy of pressure through sanctions and diplomacy through negotiations, in which the United States and the United Kingdom have been strong partners for so long.
Germany's foreign minister described the deal as a turning point after difficult times. Spain, Norway, and Sweden expressed hope for a broader solution in the future. There's new outrage tonight over one issue that did not come up during those talks in Geneva: the future of our American pastor Saeed Abedini. I asked about this as the news was breaking last night. He was put in prison in Iran more than a year ago for practicing his Christian faith. In fact, he was opening up churches and spreading the word. Pastor Abedini's family is in Idaho, and they fear for his safety more than ever now. He's living in one of the most dangerous prisons in Iran, facing life-threatening conditions daily. There was hope the United States would use leverage of these talks to help him go free. But a National Security Council spokesperson confirms that didn't happen.
The idea that we cut a deal, so to speak, we've reached this agreement with the Iranians and did not secure the release of Americans held hostage in Iran, which is exactly what's happening here, is outrageous. This was a historic blunder of huge proportions with significant repercussions. We're easing the sanctions on Iran while they continue to torture American citizens held in their jails.
Pastor Saeed is serving an 8-year sentence. And by the way, this particular part of the story was all over social media last night when the story was breaking. It continues today. When the Fox News political insiders join us later this hour, we're going to go in deep on this one. We're going to talk about what was missed, what was in the deal, so on and so forth. Also, brand new reaction from Capitol Hill concerning the latest batch